Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Today I want to be talking about the Zerg vs Protoss matchup, but more importantly about attack waves in Zerg vs Protoss. I get a lot of questions about people asking like what build order should I be going for or what unit composition should I be building, and in either of those questions or in either of those scenarios I can't really give a solid answer. Primarily because you need to play Zerg, you need to play responsive, you need to play very adaptable, and a lot of scenarios you just simply can't go for the build that you maybe had set out to be because your opponent is, for example, going for a 2 base all-in, or they're going for a 3 base all-in, or they're playing a heavy macro game, or they're doing some sort of cheese. There's countless different options, and in all scenarios you're gonna have to respond accordingly to what is going on in the game. Now, in this particular case, I want to be addressing the most standard and what I, quote-unquote standard call, or what I at the moment quote-unquote call standard for Protoss, is when they go for a quick expansion, then they transition in towards a third base, and they run an army that is based around robotics units. So generally speaking, that's going to be, for example, a little bit of adept aggression early on, then they expand towards the natural, then they add on the robotics facility, expand towards the third, add on immortals, add on disruptors, and do all that sort of shenanigans, which happens at the very least at the higher level in almost every single scenario. In almost every game, unless they go for some sort of cheese, that seems to be the base build that Protoss is built around and the main strategy that Protoss is focusing on. Now, in either of those scenarios, and obviously that could be a little bit deviation in this specific case, in either of these scenarios, you need to make sure that you play Zerg in different kinds of attack waves. And what do I mean with attack waves? So generally speaking, you have different kinds of timing attacks that you execute while playing Zerg. So for example, you push out when +1 attack finishes up and you move across the map. In this particular case, my main strategy and my main goal in this game that we're watching right now as well is to play a laid back style and attack when a certain upgrade finishes, then attack when a certain upgrade finishes, then attack again when a certain upgrade finishes, or when a certain unit finishes up. And I found this game a couple days ago. I played it a couple games ago, or a couple days ago. I found this game to be a pretty solid example of exactly what the ideal scenarios are, I suppose, because honestly, I sort of just roll over the Protoss in this particular match. And that is primarily because of the compositions that I'm going for and the unit switching that I'm doing. So I primarily want to be talking about the different kinds of waves that I'm executing, as well as the thought process behind that. Now, as you can see, I am opening up with a relatively standard build, going for the hatchery into the gas guys or into the spawning pool, and now adding on the third base as well. Super standard. In the meantime, I find my opponent has also taken their natural, and I'm gonna try and respond accordingly. Now, pretty much all of the Zerg vs Protoss matchups right now where you're going for a ground-based army are based around the Hydralisk. Hydralisk are great for murdering everything that Protoss has, pretty much everything that Protoss has, unless it's called Splash. So they're pretty bad against things like, for example, High Templar, they're pretty bad against Colossus, they're pretty bad against Disruptor, but they're pretty good against pretty much everything that comes out of the gateway that is not called High Templar, and pretty good against the base army of Protoss. And because they can obviously be morphed into this thing called a Lurker, generally speaking, that unit is going to be your go-to style, your go-to strategy, and you can transition out of it. Now, the problem is that obviously you can only make Hydralisk after getting to a lair and after getting your actual lair done. So in this particular case, I'm gonna have to start off with some Zerglings, and in pretty much all scenarios, I start off with a handful of Zerglings. Generally speaking, right when link speed finishes, you want to be having about 8 links or so. That is primarily so you can take out potential adept aggression. Adepts are relatively easy to kill. Generally speaking, if they've got 2, all you need is about 8 Zerglings and then you drone up. Early game is all about trying to figure out how many workers you can get away with, and at the 4-minute mark, of course, you want to be getting the blind spore crawlers because they counter so many of the incoming Protoss builds. Now, while I'm getting my workers, right, so keep in mind, I only made a handful of links right now. While I'm getting my workers, I'm already thinking about the strategy and the attack waves that I want to be going for. And most of the time, the very first attack wave, like I said, is gonna be with Hydralisk when the upgrades finish. Now, you have several options here. You could also go for an attack wave with Roaches and Ravagers. You would, generally speaking, be getting the double evolution chambers right about right now, and then transition towards a couple of Roaches right when the lair finishes up. If you get the double evo chambers right when the lair starts up, you will be able to finish up the upgrades in the evo chambers as well as the roach speed upgrade at the exact same time. Now in this particular case, as you may have noticed, I'm not actually going for that because I know my opponent is going for a lot of adepts. I already saw them move across the map, and more importantly, I saw that he got the third base already started. Now I'm gonna have to make at least some units to deal with the incoming adept aggression, and I'm doing so by just morphing my units or my drones into buildings here instead. Gonna end up losing a couple of things here and there. Not that big of a deal though. As you can see, I'm already starting to drone up once again. Not obviously overworking here either. I don't want to be, you know, cut out of my process or about my unit production for too long either, but I'm primarily focused here on getting my lair up. Or getting my droning up and then my lair as well. So now the lair is done, I'm gonna go ahead and add on the double evolution chamber, and very shortly I'll be adding on the Hydra den as well as the roach speed, I believe, as well. In this particular case, I'm gonna go ahead and make my very first attack wave of primarily Hydralisk with +1/+1 upgrades. I want to make sure that I'm getting the Hydralisk out in stupid amounts of numbers, but I do need to make sure as well that I move out. One of the main mistakes that I see a lot when coaching Zerg players, in particular somewhere around Platinum and Diamond League, is that they don't actually move out aggressively enough against Protoss. You can't let Protoss sit back. The problem is that once Protoss maxes out, they're much more difficult to kill. So in most scenarios, you want to have at least a few attack waves of units that you can be putting out. Now, as you can see, I do get caught off guard right here by the Warp Prism. I'm trying my very best you know, deal with the aggression here. Obviously, I don't want to be losing any workers. And so far, I lost a couple of workers, but really not too many. You know, compared to the amount of units that he's been losing, I think it's all been justified. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my Hydra upgrades here. I'm also gonna be getting the +1/+1 upgrades. And when I'm done making workers, and notice, right? Even though I'm getting my upgrades right now and I'm trying to start, or I'm starting to get an army, I'm still prioritizing the workers here as well. I want to make sure that I have at least 3 base saturation before I actively start to make a stupid amount of workers. And now that I've got the 3 bases, I think fully saturated, is when I start my non-stop army production. So my very first attack wave is gonna be containing a lot of Hydralisk as well as leftover roaches and Zerglings that I had to make in the early part of the game. Still adding on a few overlords here as well, but very shortly you will see that I'm starting to add on the Hydras as well. Now, note, by the way, in case you're wondering, I do make a slight mistake here. I was not supposed to be getting the armor upgrade. Generally speaking, the carapace upgrade versus Protoss is not worth it, and you instead want to be adding on the +1 melee as well as the +1 missile upgrade. That seems to be what all of the pro gamers are doing currently. But once I hit my full saturation, actually, I decided to even get some additional workers here for the fort base as well, now that I really want to have the gases up. But right as I can, I'm going to start producing a stupid amount of Hydralisk, and I'm going to use those Hydras as well as the additional units that I still had left over to make some final, or some initial pushing with. So notice, right? Up to this very moment, I've just been playing defensively. I've just sort of been like the Zerg sponge. I've been soaking in all of the damage that my opponent could go for while establishing that economy lead. And notice right now that economy lead has been established because I got 76 workers and my opponent got 64. And this is where my Hydra production really starts happening. I want to go for the push very shortly. I want to go for the aggression in a little bit here. However, I don't quite have the army to support it just yet. Trying to get the biggest army, however, that I can, and I'm trying to obviously get a stupid amount of units out here early on after getting my my worker saturation. So even after losing a couple workers, I still add those on as well. But now you can really start the Hydra production starting to ramp up, and that is going to be attack wave number 1. I've let my opponent macro. I've let him sit back for the majority of the time. I've been taking all of the hits, but this is where I start moving out. This is where I really start going for the aggression. So my upgrades have finished up. +1 and +1 have finished up. I'm gonna go ahead and start up my +2 armor here. I actually decided to switch it out as well because I did make a slight mistake. And while I'm moving across the map, this is actually pretty important. While I'm going for attack wave number 1 here with a lot of Hydralisk and then the leftover units that I had, I'm already getting the transition for the second upgrades and the second attack wave. And that's something that you gotta keep in mind when playing Zerg. You can't just push out and then expect the game to be ending right there. If that would be the case, it would be practically me going all in. All I'm really trying to do here with this army is reduce the size of the Protoss. As you can see, right now, it is basically right before they get their stupid amount of splash out, before they really get a lot of damage in, and that's where my Hydralisk are gonna shine. Now, I'm already setting up the transition towards the second attack wave right as I'm moving out. I'm getting the +2, or I guess the +2 melee as well as the +1 missile upgrade here, but I'm getting 2 additional upgrades as well as the lurker den right at this moment in time. So while I'm pushing out, I'm already setting up for the next engagement. And that is something that you really want to try and start incorporating in your play as much as possible because it helps out in so many situations. Now, I'm still adding on more and more units here. Obviously, I'm going to be morphing in some of the Ravagers as well with the leftover gas that I have. Won't be able to start my Lurkers up just yet, but at the very least, I got that transition ready to go. I'm also already starting up the Infestation Pit, so I can transition towards a +3 army soon enough. I can get my Hive up if I want to, and decide if I want to go for example, Ultralisk, or if I want to go for example, Brute Lords. So I'm just basically trying to engage here, pick off whatever units I can. Ideally, I get a kill on that third or on that fourth command center of it, or a fourth nexus rather, because it is rather early in the game, and I'm just trying to rain some damage here. Now notice, I'm not shoving my army against his. I'm not trying to absolutely murder my opponent here. I'm just trying to be smart about my positioning, and once I get the damage that I came here for, which is that fourth base, I decide to turn around, right? Now, I do get the Mothership Core here, but I'm deciding to turn around, and once again, right, I'm deciding to turn around. I'm getting my next transition ready to go. I know that I want to push out soon once again, when the set of upgrades finishes up and when I can start my Lurkers, right? However, I already have the next attack wave coming in. So notice, even before the second attack wave really happens, I'm already transitioning towards the Hive as well as the Spire. Now, if you get the Hive and the Spire at the same time, they actually have the same amount of morph time. So that's 71 seconds, that's 71 seconds, so you can start the Greater Spire right from the get-go. I want to be going for the Greater Spire units in this particular case, but I'm setting up the next engagement before... I'm setting up, like, the engagement after the next engagement before it has even happened. Now, in this particular case, you can see my opponent is playing rather aggressive. He gets the warp in here as well. I will need to retreat, kill the units that I got. Did get the kill on the warp prism there, but I'm trying to be smart here. So notice I'm also primarily reinforcing now with Zerglings. Obviously, I do have upgrades on those, which is really, really helpful. But that is primarily so I can start saving up a bunch of gas. Now, I was a little low on gas just because I wasn't saturated in that fourth base. But the reason why I obviously want gas is so I can morph in these beautiful things called Lurkers. And that is going to be attack wave number 2. I know that my opponent is probably, since he's not moving out, he's probably trying to regain that fourth base here as well. And that is exactly what I'm going to try and prevent from happening here too. So +2, or the second set of upgrades rather, have just finished up, and I am going to start moving across the map now that my Lurkers are good to go as well. Now, I'm nearly maxed out, once again going straight into the next set of upgrades before I'm even really pushing out, and I want to try and see how much damage I can do with attack wave number 2. So attack wave number 2 is going to be a relatively similar army, except that I've morphed a lot of the Hydras that I've had into Lurkers, and I've added on a lot of Zerglings because I can. At this point in time, I'm slow pushing the Lurkers forward, trying to get the maximum damage in. Now, I know that he probably is going to have splash damage, so I need to be careful about these engagements. And there we do indeed see the disruptors. Now, sometimes this is not going to be allowed to really happen. I'm already transitioning while this fight is going on towards the next set of changes. So I will be able to do quite a bunch of damage here while this is all going on, right? But the real strength here is that I'm trying to get my opponent to make an army that is strong against the units that I have while transitioning into the next set of units myself. So I'm obviously doing maximum amount of damage that I can with this army, but in the meantime, I got my Corruptors coming in, I got my Greater Spire coming in, and I'm setting up for the next attack wave as well. I'm getting the set of upgrades here in the Evo chambers as well, trying to get those out as soon as possible. And I'm saving up gas by making Zerglings, by just simply trying to get my bunch of Brute Lords out. So obviously I don't really want to be giving up the army that I have over here. If I manage to kill his expansion though, that's obviously a great addition here. Trying to do a little bit more damage here, trying to shoo him away. And while I definitely may be able to pick up the victory, if I continue my Hydra Link composition, it is important to note that at this point in time, he is actually creating 3 disruptors at a given time, which is extremely scary. Like, he is countering the ground-based army that I have, but I'm already setting up for the next engagement, right? I'm already here for the next push that they're going for. So in this particular case, I went for a Ling Roach army early on, morphed in a couple of Ravagers after I had the gas, but my real push was the Hydralisk, so that was attack wave number 1. Second attack wave was with the double upgrades that finished up, as well as a bunch of Lurkers, and then attack wave number 3 has been the Brute Lord upgrades as well, that I'm trying to, or my Brute Lord push here as well, that I'm trying to execute right now. So, long story short, while I've been giving it a couple of tips here and there, I would highly recommend you set up the next engagement that you have in mind as early as you possibly can. Ideally, before you move across the map is when you already got your next transition coming in. Because most of the time, if you think about what your opponent is going to be going for to counter your current army, you can set up an engagement in a minute or two from now that will help you take the battle against the army that is creating at this point in time to counter your current army. But that unit's composition is going to be pretty terrible about your upcoming one. Now, I do make a minor micro mistake here. Obviously, this is some pretty heavy strategy talk that we're going on, by the way, and this is only really going to be relevant at the highest level of plays, I suppose. Obviously, I gotta be careful here, dodging that disruptor bolt to the best of my abilities, transitioning here. But once again, right, while this engagement is going on, I got the next transition happening. Adrenal Glands is already almost done. I'm getting +3 melee upgrades as well as +3 armor, and I'm also getting the Ultralisk Cavern. Now, the reason for that is that I know that my opponent is probably gonna be getting units such as Heavy Stargate. Heavy Stargate, easily countered with Ultras because, for example, Phoenixes can't lift Ultras. But on top of that, if he decides to go for Heavy Stalker, I can reinforce with Zerglings and Ultras as well. So I'm trying to set up engagements and unit compositions here that will counter the unit composition that my opponent is going for in about a minute or two from now. And obviously, like I said, that's only going to be relevant at higher levels of play. But at the very least, it is relatively easy to incorporate these sort of moves into your playstyle. Now, one of the most important things to keep in mind is that you need to make the drones early on. If you don't have the drones to really support this, obviously it's going to be rather difficult. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Let me know if you would like to see more high strategic matches like this one as well, or at the very least, where I'm talking a lot more about higher level thought processes rather than, you know, focusing more on the basics. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that, because I'm always interested in uploading more StarCraft, because this game is awesome. I do want to thank you all for watching, however. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!